Welcome and settle in for tonight's journey into one of the oldest and most enduring stories ever told. As the day quietly fades behind you, allow your thoughts to drift far away from the noise of the modern world. Imagine warm Mediterranean breezes carrying the scent of olive trees, distant mountains glowing beneath the last light of evening, and quiet stone temples standing beneath skies filled with countless stars. Tonight, we travel back more than 2,000 years to ancient Greece, a land where every river, forest, and mountain seemed alive with mystery, and where the gods themselves were believed to walk among ordinary people. Our story is about a hero whose name has echoed across centuries. To the Romans, he was known as Hercules. To the Greeks, he was Heracles, a name that carried its own curious irony. Although he would become the greatest hero in all of Greek mythology, his life was shaped from the very beginning by the anger of one powerful goddess. It is a tale filled with impossible creatures, distant kingdoms, enchanted gardens, and journeys to places where no mortal was ever meant to go. But despite all of its famous adventures, the story of Hercules is not simply about extraordinary strength. It is also a story about mistakes, forgiveness, endurance, and the hope that even after life's darkest moments, redemption may still be found. That is one reason why people have continued to tell his story for thousands of years. The world that gave birth to Hercules was very different from our own. Ancient Greece was not yet a single nation, but a collection of independent city-states scattered across rugged mountains and countless islands. Narrow valleys opened onto sparkling blue seas. Shepherds guided their flocks along rocky hillsides. Farmers tended vineyards and olive groves much as their ancestors had for generations. Fishermen pushed wooden boats into calm coastal waters before sunrise, while merchants carried wine, grain, pottery, and stories from one harbor to another. Life was often difficult, and nature could be unpredictable. Earthquakes shook the land without warning. Storms rose suddenly over the Aegean Sea. Crops sometimes failed. Without modern science to explain these mysteries, the ancient Greeks looked to their gods. Every flash of lightning, every strong wind, every successful harvest, and every unexpected tragedy could be understood as part of a larger divine story unfolding beyond human sight. High above the world, they imagined Mount Olympus, where 12 great Olympian gods ruled over every part of existence. Zeus governed the skies with thunder in his hand. Hera watched over marriage and family. Poseidon commanded the restless seas. Athena inspired wisdom, while Apollo filled the world with music and sunlight. Each god possessed incredible power, yet they also displayed very human emotions. They argued, celebrated, became jealous, fell in love, and occasionally interfered in the lives of ordinary people below. To the Greeks, these myths were far more than entertaining stories. They offered explanations for the world around them and explored questions that remain familiar even today. Why do good people suffer? Can someone overcome their past? Is strength enough, or must wisdom guide it? What does it truly mean to become a hero? Among all the heroes who filled Greek legend, none became more famous than Hercules. His image appeared on painted pottery, carved temple walls, marble statues, and coins. Travelers shared stories of his adventures wherever they journeyed. Children learned of his courage. Athletes admired his unmatched strength. Even centuries after the ancient world faded into history, artists, writers, and storytellers continued to return to his remarkable life. Yet, if you had met Hercules at the beginning of his story, you might never have guessed how legendary he would become. He entered the world not as a triumphant champion, but as an infant surrounded by danger before he could even speak. powerful forces had already begun shaping his destiny long before he understood who he was. As we make our way through his life tonight, we will not rush from one battle to the next. Instead, we'll wander slowly through the landscapes of ancient Greece. We'll pause beside quiet temples where priests tended sacred fires. We'll cross peaceful valleys dotted with sheep and wildflowers. We'll follow dusty roads climbed by merchants, pilgrims, and wandering poets. Along the way, we'll meet kings and queens, monsters and gods, loyal friends and bitter enemies, each adding another thread to a story that has endured for nearly 3 millennia. So make yourself comfortable, let your breathing slow, and allow the world around you to gently fade away. The stars are beginning to appear above the mountains of Greece. The cicadas sing softly in the warm evening air, and somewhere beyond the olive groves, the greatest hero of myth is about to begin his remarkable journey. Our story starts not with Hercules himself, but with the immortal gods whose choices would shape his destiny long before his first breath. Long before Hercules took his first breath, there existed another story unfolding high above the mountains of Greece. It was a story of immortal beings whose choices shaped the lives of every mortal below. To understand Hercules, we must first climb, at least in our imagination, to the legendary home of the Olympian gods. The ancient Greeks believed that the highest peak in their land, Mount Olympus, reached so far into the clouds that it touched the heavens themselves. Snow rested upon its upper slopes even during the warmth of summer, while forests of pine and oak covered its lower hillsides. No ordinary traveler could simply wander to the top and meet the gods. Olympus belonged to another realm entirely. There, the air was always fresh, the gardens never withered, and golden halls gleamed beneath an endless blue sky. Time passed differently in that divine place. While generations of humans were born, grew old, and faded into memory, the gods remained forever youthful. At the center of this heavenly kingdom ruled Zeus, king of the gods and master of thunder. When storms rolled across the mountains or lightning split the sky, many Greeks believed Zeus was reminding the world of his presence. Yet Zeus had not always been king. According to Greek myth, he had overthrown his own father, Cronus, one of the mighty titans who ruled before the Olympians. Fearing a prophecy that one of his children would someday replace him, Cronus had swallowed each newborn child moments after birth. But Zeus escaped this fate through the cleverness of his mother, Rhea, who hid the infant on the island of Crete and tricked Cronus into swallowing a wrapped stone instead. Raised in secret, Zeus eventually returned as a grown man. With the help of his siblings, Poseidon, Hades, Hera, Demeter, and Hestia, he challenged the Titans in a great struggle remembered as the Titanomachy. After years of conflict, the Olympians emerged victorious, establishing a new order over the cosmos. The world was divided among the 3 brothers. Zeus claimed the heavens and the sky. Poseidon became ruler of the seas, where waves obeyed his mighty trident. Hades received the Underworld, the quiet kingdom where the souls of the dead journeyed after life. Although people often feared Hades, he was not considered evil. His role was simply to govern the land that every mortal would eventually reach. Around these great rulers gathered many other Olympian gods, each responsible for different parts of life. Athena offered wisdom to rulers and craftsmen alike. Apollo filled the world with sunlight, music, poetry, and healing. Artemis watched over forests and wild animals. Hermes carried messages with astonishing speed, while Aphrodite inspired love and beauty wherever she wandered. Ares delighted in battle, while Hephaestus, the divine blacksmith, forged magnificent weapons and jewelry within fiery workshops. Together they formed a divine family, but it was hardly a peaceful one. Unlike many later ideas of perfect heavenly beings, the Olympian gods behaved in surprisingly human ways. They celebrated victories with laughter and feasts, but they also argued, became jealous, held grudges, and sometimes allowed pride to guide their decisions. This closeness between gods and humans made Greek mythology feel deeply personal. Every shrine, every sacrifice, and every festival served as a reminder that the gods were active participants in the world below. Throughout Greece, people honored these deities with magnificent temples built from white marble. Priests tended sacred fires that burned day and night. During festivals, musicians played flutes and lyres while athletes competed in contests dedicated to the gods. The Olympic Games themselves began as a celebration in honor of Zeus, drawing competitors from across the Greek world. For ordinary people, these rituals were woven naturally into everyday life. Before beginning a voyage, sailors prayed for calm seas. Farmers thanked Demeter before planting grain. Families left small gifts at neighborhood shrines, hoping for health, prosperity, or protection. The gods were never distant ideas. They were constant companions in every season of life. Among all the Olympians, however, one goddess would become especially important in our story. Hera, queen of the gods and wife of Zeus, ruled over marriage, family, and the sacred promises that bound people together. She was majestic, intelligent, and fiercely protective of her honor. Artists often portrayed her wearing a crown, accompanied by peacocks whose brilliant feathers reflected her royal dignity. But Hera possessed another quality that would shape the life of Hercules long before he was born. She had little patience for Zeus's frequent romances with mortal women. Time and again, Zeus allowed his curiosity and affection to lead him away from his marriage, leaving Hera to bear the humiliation before both gods and mortals. Unable to punish the king of the gods himself, Hera often directed her anger toward those connected to his affairs. Over many generations, this pattern became a recurring thread throughout Greek mythology. It would soon touch the life of an innocent child who had not yet entered the world. That child would one day become the greatest hero Greece had ever imagined. But before Hercules could earn everlasting fame through courage and impossible labors, his destiny would first be shaped by the rivalry of two immortals whose conflict echoed across heaven itself. In the next chapter, that long-awaited child is finally born, and with his arrival, one of mythology's greatest stories truly begins. In the fertile plains of Boeotia stood the ancient city of Thebes. Protected by sturdy stone walls and surrounded by rich farmland, it was one of the great cities of mainland Greece. Here lived a noble woman named Alcmene, whose quiet life would soon become forever intertwined with the affairs of the gods. Alcmene was admired throughout Greece not only for her beauty but also for her wisdom and kindness. She was married to Amphitryon, a brave warrior and descendant of the hero Perseus, famous for defeating the fearsome Gorgon Medusa. Before returning home to Alcmene, Amphitryon departed on a military campaign to settle a conflict with a neighboring people. While Amphitryon was absent, Zeus happened to notice Alcmene. Although he ruled the heavens, he frequently descended to earth, disguising himself in many different forms. Sometimes he appeared as an eagle, sometimes as a humble traveler, and at other times he assumed the appearance of people whom mortals trusted. Zeus took on the exact appearance of Amphitryon himself. So perfect was the disguise that not even Alcmene realized the visitor before her was the king of the gods. Some legends even say Zeus caused the night to last 3 times longer than usual, stretching the hours beneath the stars so he could remain with her. By the time the real Amphitryon finally returned from his campaign, the strange events of that miraculous night had already set destiny into motion. Soon afterward, Alcmene discovered that she was expecting a child. Far above on Mount Olympus, however, nothing involving Zeus remained secret for long. Hera, queen of the gods, quickly learned what had happened. This was far from the first time Zeus had shown affection toward a mortal woman, and each new affair wounded Hera's pride. As the goddess who protected marriage and family, she viewed these betrayals as deeply personal insults. Yet Zeus himself remained beyond punishment. No other deity possessed the power to challenge the king of Olympus directly. Instead, Hera's anger settled upon the innocent child who had not yet been born. The unborn baby had done nothing wrong, yet from the very beginning his life would be shaped by forces far beyond his control. Before he opened his eyes to the world, he had already gained both the favor of Zeus and the lasting resentment of Hera. As the months passed, another important child was also waiting to be born. Not far away lived another branch of Perseus' royal family. There, a woman named Nisippe was expecting a son called Eurystheus. Although the two unborn children were cousins, few could have imagined how closely their futures would become connected. One day Zeus proudly gathered the gods upon Olympus and made a bold declaration. He announced that a descendant of Perseus would soon be born, and that this child would become a mighty ruler whose authority would extend over the lands around him. Zeus intended this prophecy to refer to the son of Alcmene, whom he already knew would possess extraordinary strength. Hera listened carefully. Rather than openly arguing with Zeus, she quietly devised a plan. She persuaded Zeus to swear an unbreakable oath that the very next descendant of Perseus born into the royal family would indeed receive this promised kingship. Confident that Hercules would be born first, Zeus agreed without hesitation. Only after the oath had been spoken did Hera reveal the brilliance of her scheme. Calling upon Eileithyia, the goddess of childbirth, Hera delayed Alcmene's labor while hastening the birth of Eurystheus. Meanwhile, Eurystheus was born prematurely. Because Zeus had already sworn his sacred oath, it could not be broken. The promise was fulfilled exactly as Hera intended. Instead of Hercules inheriting the royal position foretold by Zeus, Eurystheus became king. Only after Eurystheus had safely entered the world did Hera allow Alcmene's labor to continue. At last, the child destined to become Hercules was born. The Greeks called him Heracles, meaning the glory of Hera. The name seems almost unbelievable considering everything that followed. Alongside Heracles was born his twin brother, Iphicles. Although they entered the world on the same day, they did not share the same father. According to the myth, Iphicles was the son of Amphitryon, while Heracles was the son of Zeus. The brothers would grow up together, yet one possessed ordinary human strength while the other carried divine power within him. To those who visited the household, the infants appeared much like any other newborn children. No one looking into Heracles' tiny face could have imagined the impossible adventures that awaited him. Yet unseen by his family, the wheels of destiny were already turning. Because of Hera's careful planning, the child born with the blood of Zeus would one day be forced to serve King Eurystheus, the very cousin who had taken the destiny originally intended for him. The oath sworn upon Olympus had quietly altered the course of an entire life. For now, however, those distant trials remained hidden in the future. The quiet home in Thebes echoed only with the gentle sounds of two sleeping infants and relieved parents celebrating their safe arrival. But Hera had not forgotten. The queen of the gods had failed to prevent Heracles' birth, yet her determination remained as strong as ever. Before long, she would make her first attempt to rid the world of the child she had come to hate. And in doing so, she would reveal that this seemingly helpless baby possessed a strength unlike anything the world had ever seen. The home of Amphitryon and Alcmene soon settled into the gentle rhythm familiar to young families everywhere. In the courtyard, servants swept stone paths while clay jars were filled with fresh water from nearby springs. Inside, two cradles rested side by side. Although Heracles and his twin brother Iphicles looked much alike, their futures could not have been more different. Iphicles was entirely mortal, destined for an ordinary human life with its joys and hardships. Heracles, though still a helpless infant, carried within him the blood of Zeus. No one yet knew how that hidden strength would reveal itself. Far above on Olympus, however, Hera had not forgotten the child. The queen of the gods remained determined to erase the living reminder of Zeus's latest betrayal. Since she could not challenge Zeus directly, she chose once again to act against the innocent child. One quiet evening, as darkness settled across Thebes and oil lamps flickered inside the house, Hera summoned two enormous serpents. Ancient storytellers imagined them as creatures unlike any ordinary snakes found in the Greek countryside. Their scales shimmered like polished bronze, their eyes glowed in the darkness, and their bodies moved with silent purpose. Slipping unnoticed through the sleeping city, the serpents reached the royal household. They crossed the courtyard without disturbing the guards, glided beneath doorways, and entered the room where the twin infants lay asleep. Moonlight spilled softly through an open window, casting pale silver across the floor. The tiny cradles rocked gently as a warm breeze stirred the linen curtains. Their long bodies curled around the wooden cradles as they raised their heads above the sleeping children. Forked tongues tasted the air. The room remained silent except for the faint rustling of scales against woven blankets. Iphicles awoke first. Seeing the terrifying creatures looming over him, the infant cried out in fear. His desperate cries echoed through the house, startling the servants and waking his parents. But before anyone could reach the nursery, something extraordinary happened. Instead of shrinking away, the baby Heracles reached toward the serpents. His tiny hands closed around their thick necks with astonishing strength. The great snakes twisted wildly, coiling around the infant as they struggled to escape. Their powerful bodies thrashed against the cradles, overturning blankets and shaking the room. Yet Heracles did not release his grip. The struggle lasted only moments. When Amphitryon and Alcmene rushed into the chamber, they found an astonishing sight. Iphicles was crying loudly, but beside him sat the infant Heracles, calm and unharmed, holding a lifeless serpent in each hand. The danger had passed before any adult had arrived. The impossible scene left everyone speechless. According to some ancient writers, the prophet Tiresias was later asked to explain what had happened. He declared that the child possessed divine strength and foretold a future filled with remarkable achievements. The serpents had become the first sign that Heracles' destiny would be unlike that of any other mortal. Stories of the miracle spread quickly throughout Thebes. Travelers carried it to distant villages. Some believed the gods had blessed the child. Others whispered that such strength could only bring great challenges. In the world of Greek mythology, extraordinary gifts were often accompanied by equally extraordinary burdens. Artists many centuries later loved this dramatic moment. Greek potters painted the infant Heracles gripping the snakes while frightened adults looked on in amazement. Sculptors carved the scene into marble, preserving the miracle for generations yet unborn. Even today, it remains one of the most recognizable episodes from his childhood. The story also reveals something important about Greek ideas of heroism. Heracles did not choose this confrontation. He did not seek glory or prove his courage before cheering crowds. Danger came to him while he lay sleeping in his cradle. His first great feat was not the result of ambition but of survival. For the ancient Greeks, this reflected an important truth about fate. A person's destiny often arrived unexpectedly, shaped by forces beyond human control. Heroes became heroes not because they searched for hardship, but because hardship found them. Meanwhile, Hera's first attempt had failed completely. Rather than destroying the child, she had revealed his extraordinary nature to the world. Yet her determination remained unchanged. If anything, witnessing the infant's impossible strength only convinced her that he might one day grow powerful enough to fulfill Zeus's hopes. So the goddess waited. Years would pass before she acted again, but her anger never faded. Like a distant storm hidden beyond the horizon, it lingered, certain to return when the time was right. For Heracles, however, childhood continued. The frightening encounter with the serpents soon became only a story told by his parents and visitors who came to see the remarkable boy. He would grow, learn, play, and make mistakes like any other child. Although signs of unusual strength appeared from time to time, he still had much to discover about himself and the destiny that awaited him. The greatest hero of Greek mythology had survived his very first trial before he was old enough to speak. Many greater challenges still lay ahead, but the message was already clear. Neither monsters nor the anger of the gods would find Heracles an easy foe. Even as an infant, fate had announced that this was no ordinary child. As the years passed, the remarkable infant who had once strangled 2 serpents slowly became an energetic young boy. The people of Thebes watched Heracles grow taller and stronger with each season. Despite his divine parentage, Heracles did not spend his childhood among the gods. He was raised as any noble Greek boy might have been, surrounded by family, teachers, servants, and the traditions of his homeland. Ancient Greece valued a balanced education, believing that strength alone was not enough. Heracles' education reflected the ideals of noble society. He learned to read poetry and recite stories that had been passed down through generations. Music was considered an essential part of a proper upbringing, believed to bring harmony to both the mind and the soul. One of his teachers, Linus, instructed him in singing and the playing of the lyre, a graceful instrument whose soft notes accompanied many Greek songs and celebrations. Heracles, however, found little joy in music. His enormous hands, already unusually powerful for a child, were far better suited to gripping spears than delicate strings. His education extended far beyond music. Experienced trainers taught him wrestling, boxing, running, and the throwing of javelins. Hunting became another important skill. Young nobles often spent days tracking deer, wild boar, or smaller game through forests and rocky hills, learning endurance as well as survival. Among all these disciplines, Heracles excelled wherever strength was required. Yet alongside these gifts lay a weakness that would trouble him throughout his life. Heracles possessed a fierce temper. Most of the time he was cheerful and generous, quick to laugh and eager to help those around him. But when anger took hold, it came suddenly and with tremendous force. One unfortunate incident during his education became famous throughout later Greek mythology. Heracles was practicing the lyre under the guidance of his music teacher, Linus. Frustrated by his student's lack of progress, Linus sharply criticized him. The lesson quickly turned into an argument. In a sudden burst of anger, the young Heracles struck his teacher with the wooden lyre. The blow was far stronger than anyone expected. Linus collapsed and died from the injury. The room fell silent. What had begun as an ordinary lesson ended in tragedy, not because Heracles intended to kill, but because he had not yet learned to control the incredible strength that came so naturally to him. Ancient audiences understood this episode as an important lesson. Extraordinary power demanded extraordinary self-control. Because the death had occurred during what some viewed as self-defense, Heracles escaped severe punishment. Even so, the event deeply concerned his family. Amphitryon realized that his foster son needed an environment where his unusual abilities could be directed toward productive work rather than conflict. Instead of remaining within the busy streets of Thebes, Heracles was sent to spend much of his youth in the countryside. This change suited him perfectly. Away from crowded buildings and formal lessons, he found peace among rolling hills, quiet forests, and open pastures. He watched over cattle grazing beneath wide blue skies and spent long hours exploring the landscape. Shepherds taught him practical skills that could never be learned inside a classroom. He became familiar with changing weather, hidden springs, animal tracks, and the safest paths through the mountains. Life as a shepherd required patience more than excitement. Days passed slowly beneath the warm Mediterranean sun. The ringing of sheep bells drifted across the valleys while cicadas sang from olive trees. At night, Heracles slept beneath brilliant stars, wrapped in simple woolen blankets as small campfires flickered nearby. These peaceful years shaped him in important ways. Living close to nature strengthened both his body and his appreciation for the land he would one day protect. He learned to endure heat, cold, hunger, and long journeys without complaint. The quiet solitude also gave him time to mature beyond the impulsive boy he had once been. Travelers passing through the countryside occasionally noticed the unusually tall young shepherd. Stories spread of a youth who could lift boulders that required several men to move, who walked effortlessly across steep mountain trails, and who never seemed to tire after a day's work. Yet Heracles himself remained unaware of the full extent of his destiny. He knew he was stronger than others, but he did not yet understand why the gods had granted him such remarkable gifts. Nor could he imagine that the peaceful hills surrounding Thebes would soon become the setting for his first true heroic deed. Not far from the grazing lands where he watched his cattle, a dangerous predator had begun stalking the forests of Mount Cithaeron. Villagers whispered of a massive lion that hunted livestock and threatened anyone who ventured too close. Before long, the quiet life of the young shepherd would come to an end, and the strength that had once brought only trouble would finally be used for the protection of others. The boy was steadily becoming the hero that Greece would remember for thousands of years. As Heracles reached adulthood, the broad-shouldered shepherd from the hills outside Thebes had become a man of extraordinary presence. The countryside surrounding Thebes was both beautiful and unpredictable. Dense oak forests climbed the slopes of nearby Mount Cithaeron, while streams wound through fields bright with wildflowers each spring. Among those forests lived a lion unlike any ordinary beast. Ancient stories describe the lion of Cithaeron as a powerful predator that had terrorized the region for years. It raided flocks during the night, carried away cattle, and frightened villagers who depended upon their animals for survival. Unlike the famous Nemean lion that Heracles would later face, this lion was not invulnerable. Thus, however, enormous, cunning, and fearless. When word of the attacks reached Heracles, he decided to hunt the beast himself. The decision reflected an important expectation in ancient Greece. Noble men were expected to protect their communities, not simply through words but through action. Carrying his bow, a spear, and a sturdy wooden club, Heracles climbed into the forests of Mount Cithaeron. Rather than charging recklessly through the woods, he patiently followed tracks pressed into soft earth, broken branches, and scattered remains left behind by the lion's previous hunts. The mountain forests could be remarkably peaceful. A hunter never knew what might be waiting beyond the next cluster of rocks. Eventually, Heracles found the lion. The battle was fierce. The lion lunged with tremendous power, while Heracles met the attack with remarkable courage. After exhausting his weapons, he fought the beast at close range, relying upon his incredible strength. When the struggle finally ended, the lion lay defeated. The surrounding villages celebrated with relief. For many people, this was the first great deed that revealed Heracles as a protector rather than simply a man of unusual strength. Ancient storytellers say he wore the lion's skin as a cloak for some time afterward, a reminder of his victory. Although the famous lion's skin associated with Heracles would later come from the nearly invincible Nemean Lion, this earlier hunt may have inspired that enduring image. News of his success spread far beyond the countryside. The reputation of the young hero reached the ears of King Creon, ruler of Thebes. At that time, the neighboring kingdom of Orchomenus had forced Thebes to pay a heavy tribute each year. Such payments were symbols of submission and placed a burden upon the city's people. When envoys from Orchomenus arrived to collect their tribute, Heracles refused to accept the humiliation. According to the myth, he confronted the delegation and drove them away, sending a clear message that Thebes would no longer submit so easily. His boldness soon led to open conflict between the two cities. King Creon entrusted Heracles with helping lead the defense of Thebes. The young hero proved himself not only powerful but courageous under pressure. The Thebans emerged victorious, freeing themselves from the tribute they had long been forced to pay. For the people of the city, Heracles became more than a local champion. He became a symbol of hope and independence. To reward his service, King Creon offered Heracles the hand of his eldest daughter, Megra, in marriage. Little is known about Megra herself, as the ancient myths focus primarily on Heracles. She is generally portrayed as kind, noble, and gentle, qualities admired in Greek literature. Their marriage marked the beginning of what appeared to be a peaceful new chapter. The wedding would have been a joyful celebration. Friends and family gathered beneath open skies as garlands of fresh greenery decorated homes and courtyards. Offerings were made to the gods, asking for happiness, healthy children, and a prosperous household. Soon the couple established a home of their own. In many versions of the story, Megra and Heracles had several children together. The exact number differs among ancient authors, but all describe a family filled with promise. The once restless young hero now enjoyed the ordinary rhythms of domestic life. Morning sunlight entered the courtyard as children laughed and played. Heracles, whose strength had become legendary, could now use it for peaceful tasks, lifting heavy stones during construction, helping neighbors with difficult labor, or carrying children upon his shoulders to their delight. For a time, it seemed that destiny had finally granted him happiness. His difficult childhood was behind him. His temper appeared more controlled than before. He had earned honor through courage, gained the respect of an entire city, and found comfort within his family. To anyone looking from the outside, the future appeared bright. Yet Greek mythology often reminds us that moments of peace can be surprisingly fragile. Far above, upon the shining slopes of Mount Olympus, Hera still remembered the child she had once tried to destroy in his cradle. The years had done nothing to soften her resentment. She had watched him survive every challenge, growing stronger with each passing season. Now, as Heracles stood at the height of his happiness, the goddess prepared one final act of vengeance. The greatest sorrow of his life was drawing near, not in the form of a monster lurking in some distant forest, but as a tragedy that would strike within the walls of his own home. It would become the turning point that transformed a celebrated young hero into the weary traveler remembered throughout the rest of Greek mythology. For a brief and precious season, Heracles lived the life he had always hoped to build. His home was filled with laughter instead of danger. The years of wandering through forests and proving himself in battle seemed to have given way to something quieter. It appeared that peace had finally found him. Far above the earth, Hera continued to watch. The queen of the gods had seen the infant survive her serpents. She had watched the shepherd grow into a champion, admired by kings and common people alike. Every success only deepened her resentment. As long as Heracles lived, he stood as a reminder of Zeus's betrayal. Unable to strike Zeus, Hera chose once more to strike the sun. This time, however, she would not send a monster from the wilderness. Instead, she attacked the mind itself. The Greeks believed that the gods could influence human thoughts and emotions. Inspiration, fear, courage, and despair were often seen as gifts or punishments from divine beings. Hera called upon this power, sending a terrible madness upon Heracles unlike anything he had ever experienced. Ancient writers describe the change as sudden. The calm and loving father who had spent his days protecting his household became unable to distinguish reality from illusion. His mind was clouded by terrifying visions. Friends appeared as enemies. Familiar faces became strangers. The world around him dissolved into confusion. What happened next is among the saddest moments in all of Greek mythology. Different ancient authors tell the story in different ways. Some say Heracles believed he was fighting dangerous enemies. Others describe him as imagining that monsters had invaded his home. Whatever illusion overcame him, the result was the same. In his madness, he turned against those he loved most. The tragedy claimed the lives of his own children. In many versions of the myth, Megara also perished, though other traditions say she survived and was later given in marriage to Heracles' nephew, Iolaus. Because the ancient sources disagree, storytellers have retold this heartbreaking episode in different ways throughout history. When the madness finally lifted, silence filled the house. The terrifying visions disappeared as suddenly as they had come. Heracles looked around him and slowly began to understand what had happened. The people before him were no longer imagined enemies. They were his family. No monster had entered his home. The destruction had come from his own hands. The realization was almost unbearable. For perhaps the first time in his life, Heracles discovered that there were wounds no amount of strength could heal. He had defeated lions and armies, yet he could do nothing to undo the irreversible. Ancient Greek storytellers rarely linger on loud expressions of grief. Instead, they often portray sorrow through stillness. One can imagine Heracles standing in complete silence, unable to speak, his great strength suddenly meaningless before the weight of loss. His reputation as Greece's greatest hero offered no comfort. Honor could not erase memory. Fame could not restore what had been taken. The Greeks believed that certain acts, even when committed unwillingly, created a spiritual pollution known as miasma. It was not simply a feeling of guilt, but a condition that separated a person from both society and the favor of the gods. Before such a person could return to ordinary life, purification was necessary. Although many understood that Hera had caused the madness, Heracles himself did not try to escape responsibility. This is one of the qualities that made his story so meaningful to ancient audiences. He did not deny what had happened. He did not insist that divine interference excused him completely. Instead, overwhelmed by grief, he sought a way to atone for the terrible deeds committed while his mind had been clouded. Leaving behind the home that had once promised him happiness, Heracles began to wander. The roads of Greece stretched before him, winding through olive groves, rocky passes, and quiet villages. Travelers who encountered him likely saw only a weary man dressed in simple clothing, carrying little besides his weapons and the burden of memory. His journey reflected a familiar practice in the ancient world. When people sought guidance after great tragedy, they often traveled to one of Greece's sacred sanctuaries. These holy places offered more than religious ceremonies. They were centers of healing, prayer, and reflection where individuals hoped to receive wisdom from the gods. Among all these sanctuaries, none was more revered than Delphi. Nestled high upon the slopes of Mount Parnassus, Delphi was believed to stand at the very center of the world. Pilgrims arrived from every corner of Greece, climbing the sacred road with offerings in their hands and questions upon their hearts. It was there that Heracles hoped to discover whether redemption was still possible. Could a man who had committed such a terrible act ever find peace again? Could the favor of the gods be restored? Or would he carry this sorrow for the rest of his life? These questions would soon lead him to the most famous oracle in the ancient world. The answer he received would alter the course of his destiny forever. Rather than granting immediate forgiveness, the gods would demand something far more difficult. Heracles would be required to surrender his pride, place himself in the service of another man, and undertake a series of seemingly impossible labors. The road to redemption, he would learn, was not a single act of courage. It would become the work of an entire lifetime. Leaving Thebes behind, Heracles walked without celebration, without companions, and without any clear destination beyond the hope that somewhere in Greece an answer awaited him. For Heracles, the journey was not simply across the countryside. It was a journey away from the life he had lost. His path eventually led him toward the slopes of Mount Parnassus, where one of the most sacred places in all of Greece stood among rocky cliffs and groves of laurel trees. This was Delphi. Pilgrims arrived here from every corner of the Greek world. Some came seeking advice before founding colonies across the sea. Others wished to know whether a marriage would prosper, if crops would survive the coming season, or whether they should begin a difficult journey. The sanctuary itself was unlike any ordinary town. A winding sacred way climbed steadily toward the temple of Apollo. Along its edges stood magnificent stone monuments, statues, and treasuries built by wealthy city-states to honor the god. Every building reflected the pride of the people who had commissioned it. Bronze statues caught the sunlight, while marble columns gleamed against the dark mountains beyond. As visitors climbed higher, they passed priests preparing sacrifices and caretakers tending sacred fires that burned throughout the year. The air carried the scent of incense mixed with pine and mountain herbs. Bells from grazing goats echoed faintly across the surrounding hills. Unlike many temples, Delphi was not a place of loud celebration. People often spoke quietly as they approached, aware that they were entering ground believed to be especially close to the divine. Even today, The ruins of Delphi overlook one of the most breathtaking landscapes in Greece, with steep valleys stretching toward the distant Gulf of Corinth. At the heart of the sanctuary stood the temple of Apollo. Apollo was the god of sunlight, music, healing, and prophecy. The Greeks believed he could reveal glimpses of the future through his oracle, though never in simple or straightforward language. Within the temple served the Pythia, the priestess of Apollo. Little is known with certainty about the historical women who held this role, but ancient writers describe the Pythia as an older woman chosen to speak on behalf of the god. Before delivering prophecies, she purified herself with sacred spring water and entered the temple's inner chamber. There she sat upon a bronze tripod above a deep fissure in the earth, a place believed to connect the mortal world with divine wisdom. Whether inspired by ritual, faith, or mystery, the words she spoke were understood as Apollo's own. When Heracles finally stood before the oracle, he carried no request for wealth or victory. He asked only how he might free himself from the burden of his terrible past. The response was unlike anything he expected. The oracle declared that Heracles must leave behind his former life entirely. He would travel to Tiryns and place himself in the service of King Eurystheus. The name must have struck him with painful familiarity. Eurystheus was the very cousin whose birth Hera had manipulated years earlier. Because of the queen of the gods' deception, Eurystheus had received the kingship that Zeus had once intended for Heracles. Now fate required Heracles to serve that same man. The command must have seemed almost impossible. Heracles possessed strength greater than any mortal alive. Kings had honored him. Entire cities celebrated his courage. Yet Apollo's oracle instructed him to humble himself before a ruler far weaker than he was. This was the first trial, though no monster stood in his way. It was a lesson in humility. Ancient Greek heroes often sought glory, but Heracles would have to surrender his pride before earning redemption. His greatest battles would begin not with weapons, but with obedience. The oracle also gave him a new name by which later generations would remember his hardships. He would perform a series of great labors under Eurystheus' command. If he completed every task faithfully, the gods would grant him purification and, in time, immortality among the Olympians. The number of labors was not yet fixed. In the oldest traditions, Heracles simply began carrying out the king's commands one by one. Only later would the stories be gathered into the famous 12 labors known today. Leaving the temple, Heracles descended the sacred way once more. The same marble building stood quietly beneath the mountain sun. Pilgrims continued arriving with their own hopes and worries. Priests offered sacrifices, and the wind stirred the leaves of the sacred laurel trees. Nothing in Delphi had changed. Yet everything had changed for Heracles. For the first time since tragedy had entered his life, he possessed a purpose. The road ahead would be unimaginably difficult, but it offered something he thought he had lost forever, a chance to move forward. From Delphi, he began the journey east toward Tiryns, where King Eurystheus ruled from a heavily fortified palace. Archaeologists still marvel at the enormous stone walls that survive there today, so massive that later Greeks believed only giants could have built them. Within those walls waited a nervous king who had no desire to meet his powerful cousin face to face. Still, Eurystheus would become the man responsible for assigning the impossible tasks that transformed Heracles from a grieving hero into a legend. The first command would send him into the hills of Nemea, where an invincible lion had become the terror of the countryside. There, the true labors of Heracles would finally begin. After leaving the sacred slopes of Delphi, Heracles traveled east to the fortified city of Tiryns, where King Eurystheus ruled from a palace surrounded by enormous stone walls. Eurystheus had known since childhood that his cousin possessed extraordinary strength. Although he now held the throne promised by Hera's clever deception, he was said to fear the very man who stood before him. Ancient stories often describe the king as cautious, even timid, especially when confronted with the dangerous tasks he assigned. It was Eurystheus who gave Hercules his first labor. He was to travel to the valley of Nemea and slay a lion that had become the terror of the region. The lion was no ordinary beast. According to the myth, its golden hide could not be pierced by bronze weapons. As Hercules approached Nemea, he found villages strangely quiet. The villagers greeted the traveler with both hope and concern. Many brave men had already attempted to kill the lion, and none had succeeded. One elderly shepherd pointed toward the distant hills. "There," he told Hercules, "is the cave where the beast disappears before dawn." Hercules thanked the old man and continued alone. The landscape became steeper as he climbed. It was difficult to imagine such a beautiful place hiding a creature that inspired so much fear. For several days, Hercules searched patiently. He examined enormous footprints pressed into soft earth and found the remains of abandoned hunts. Broken branches and deep claw marks scarred tree trunks along the lion's path. Unlike many heroes eager for glory, Hercules did not rush blindly into danger. He studied the land, learning the habits of the creature he pursued. At last, he found the lion drinking from a woodland spring. It was even larger than the stories had described. Its broad shoulders rippled beneath a magnificent golden mane, and its eyes remained fixed calmly upon the strangers standing before it. Rather than fleeing, the lion seemed almost curious, as though it had never encountered anyone willing to approach. Hercules raised his bow. One arrow flew, then another. Each struck the lion squarely before bouncing harmlessly away. The beast rose slowly, giving a deep roar that echoed across the surrounding hills. The first part of the battle had taught Hercules exactly what the villagers had warned him. No ordinary weapon would defeat this creature. The lion charged. Hercules avoided its first attack and struck with his heavy club. The blow landed with tremendous force, stunning the animal but failing to kill it. The lion retreated toward a nearby cave with two separate entrances, disappearing into the darkness. Hercules paused outside. Entering carelessly could leave him trapped. Instead, he gathered heavy stones and carefully blocked one of the cave's openings. With only a single escape remaining, he stepped into the shadows. Inside, the cave was cool and silent. Only faint beams of sunlight reached through the entrance behind him. The air smelled of damp stone, and every sound echoed softly from the walls. Somewhere in the darkness, the lion waited. When it attacked again, there was little room to swing a weapon. The battle became a contest of strength alone. Setting aside his bow and club, Hercules threw himself upon the beast. The lion twisted and clawed, while the hero wrapped his powerful arms around its neck. The struggle echoed through the cave as dust fell from the rocky ceiling. Neither opponent yielded. At last, Hercules tightened his grip until the lion's movements gradually slowed. After one final struggle, the great beast became still. The valley of Nemea was safe once more. Yet a new problem immediately appeared. Hercules wished to bring proof of his victory back to Eurystheus, but no knife could cut through the lion's enchanted hide. The same magical protection that had turned away arrows also resisted every blade he carried. According to the myth, the goddess Athena quietly came to his aid, suggesting that the lion's own claws, sharp enough to pierce its magical skin, could be used to remove the hide. Following this advice, Heracles carefully skinned the animal. From that day forward, he wore the lion's hide as a cloak, fastening its great head over his own like a hood. The pelt became his most recognizable symbol, protecting him during many future adventures. Combined with his sturdy olive wood club, it created the familiar image that artists would carve into marble and paint upon pottery for centuries. When Heracles returned to Tiryns carrying the enormous lion's skin, Eurystheus was astonished. Some stories say the king became so frightened at the sight of both the hero and the slain beast that he hid inside a large bronze storage jar. Whether this tale is literal or simply a humorous addition by later storytellers, it reflects the growing contrast between the courageous hero and the anxious king who commanded him. Eurystheus accepted the proof of the labor, but he did not celebrate. Instead, he immediately began considering another task, one that he believed no man could survive. Far to the south, in the marshes near the city of Lerna, an ancient monster waited beneath the reeds. It possessed many heads, poisonous breath, and a terrifying ability that made it even more dangerous than the lion. For every head that was cut away, 2 more would grow in its place. Heracles had completed his first labor, but his greatest challenges were only beginning. The road to redemption would demand far more than strength alone. After the defeat of the Nemean Lion, Heracles returned to King Eurystheus carrying proof of his first great labor. The lion's golden hide rested across his shoulders, a symbol of both victory and the incredible challenges still waiting ahead. Yet Eurystheus was not impressed. If anything, the king became more uneasy. Each successful task revealed that Heracles was not simply a strong warrior. He was a man capable of overcoming dangers that should have been impossible. The king needed a challenge that would push even this extraordinary hero beyond his limits. So he gave Heracles his second command. He was to travel to the marshes of Lerna and destroy the Hydra. The name alone carried fear. To the ancient Greeks, places like Lerna often carried a sense of mystery. Wetlands were difficult to navigate and could appear almost otherworldly. Some believed these places were entrances to the Underworld. According to legend, the Hydra lived near one of the springs of Lerna, hiding among the reeds and shadows. It was a creature unlike anything found in the natural world. Ancient storytellers described the Hydra as a massive serpent-like monster with many heads rising from a single body. The exact number varied depending on the author. One of its heads was said to be immortal, making the creature nearly impossible to destroy. But the Hydra's greatest danger was not only its size. Its breath was poisonous. Even approaching the monster was deadly. A person who came too close risked being overcome by the creature's toxic fumes before they could ever raise a weapon. For years, the Hydra had terrorized the surrounding countryside. It attacked travelers who crossed near its waters and threatened nearby villages. When Heracles arrived at Lerna, he did not travel alone. His nephew Iolaus accompanied him. The young man was the son of Heracles' half-brother, Iphicles, and had often joined him on adventures. While Heracles possessed unmatched strength, Iolaus offered something equally valuable: loyalty and cleverness. Together, they approached the Hydra's lair. The creature's home was said to be beneath a great tree near the Anemone spring. The entrance to its cave was dark and hidden, making it the perfect shelter for such a dangerous monster. Knowing that the Hydra would not leave willingly, Heracles used burning arrows to force it from its hiding place. The plan worked. The beast emerged from the darkness, its many heads rising above the marsh. Its body moved like a great river serpent, twisting through the reeds as poisonous breath filled the air. Heracles stepped forward. The battle began. With his sword and club, he struck at the Hydra's heads one by one. But almost immediately, he discovered something that made the creature far more dangerous than any beast he had faced before. Each time he cut off one head, two more grew back in its place. The Hydra seemed to become stronger with every attack. For a moment, even Hercules' incredible strength was not enough. The battlefield became a struggle between endless regeneration and determined courage. No matter how many times Hercules struck, the monster continued returning. Then Iolaus noticed something important. The new heads could not return if the wounds were sealed before they regenerated. Taking a burning torch, Iolaus began cauterizing each neck after Hercules cut away a head. The flames prevented the monster from growing back stronger, slowly changing the balance of the battle. Together, the two companions pushed forward. Hercules attacked with his sword while Iolaus followed with fire. The marsh echoed with the clash of weapons, the roar of the creature, and the crackling sound of flames against the damp air. At last, only the immortal head remained. The final challenge was the most difficult. Knowing that this head could never be destroyed by ordinary means, Hercules buried it beneath a massive stone beside the road leading from Lerna. The monster that had haunted the region for generations was finally defeated. But the Hydra's story did not end there. Hercules dipped his arrows into the creature's poisonous blood, creating weapons that would become both powerful and dangerous in future adventures. The poison was so deadly that even the smallest wound could become fatal. When Hercules returned to Eurystheus, the king refused to give him full credit for the victory. He argued that because Iolaus had helped by using the firebrands, the labor should not count as completed by Hercules alone. This decision revealed an important part of Eurystheus' character. The king was not interested in fairness. He was searching for reasons to deny Hercules the redemption he sought. The hero accepted the judgment and continued forward. The second labor had taught him something important. Strength by itself was not always enough. The Nemean Lion had been defeated through physical power, but the Hydra required patience, observation, and cooperation. The greatest heroes were not those who simply overpowered every obstacle. They were those who adapted when the world presented something unexpected. With the Hydra gone, another impossible task awaited. Eurystheus next turned his attention to a creature that was not a monster, but something far more difficult to capture, a sacred animal belonging to the goddess Artemis. Deep within the forests of Greece ran a magnificent golden deer known as the Lernaean Hind. Unlike the Hydra and the lion, this creature could not be defeated through battle. It would require something entirely different: patience, endurance, and nearly a year of pursuit. After defeating the Hydra of Lerna, Hercules returned once again to King Eurystheus. The hero had proven that he could overcome creatures that seemed beyond mortal ability, but the king continued searching for tasks that would exhaust his patience and determination. For the third labor, Eurystheus chose a challenge unlike the ones before. There would be no monster to slay, no battle to win. Instead, Hercules was ordered to capture a sacred animal that belonged to the goddess Artemis. This creature was known as the Lernaean Hind. The hind was a magnificent deer unlike any ordinary animal found in the forests of Greece. It was said to be incredibly swift, able to outrun arrows and disappear through the wilderness before any hunter could approach. More importantly, it was sacred. Artemis, goddess of the hunt and protector of wild places, considered the animal under her protection. To harm it would risk angering one of the most powerful Olympians. Eurystheus likely believed this task would place Hercules in an impossible position. If he failed to capture the creature, he would fail the labor. But if he harmed it, he might face the wrath of Artemis herself. The hero had to succeed without causing injury. So Heracles began his pursuit. The Golden Hind moved through some of the most beautiful landscapes of the ancient Greek world. Heracles followed. Day after day, he tracked the animal's movements. At night, he rested beside small fires beneath a sky filled with stars. The pursuit lasted for nearly a year. This long journey revealed another side of Heracles. He was not only a warrior capable of defeating powerful enemies. He was also capable of endurance, discipline, and restraint. He had to control his desire for quick victory and respect the sacred nature of the creature he hunted. Eventually, after countless miles of pursuit, Heracles reached the northern lands near the river Lernaean. There, the hind paused at the edge of the water. At last, the moment arrived. Some say Heracles used a carefully placed net. Others say he captured the creature while it rested. Another tradition says he used an arrow that passed between the animal's legs without causing harm. Whatever the method, the result was the same. Heracles succeeded. He lifted the sacred hind and carried it back toward Eurystheus. But before he could complete the journey, he encountered Artemis and her brother Apollo. The gods were angry. Artemis accused Heracles of disrespecting her sacred animal. The hero did not attempt to deny what he had done. Instead, he explained that he had acted under the command of Eurystheus and had taken great care not to injure the creature. Recognizing that Heracles had not acted out of arrogance or cruelty, Artemis allowed him to continue. The hind was returned safely, and the labor was completed. The lesson of the third labor was different from the first two. The lion had required strength. The hydra had required intelligence and cooperation. The hind required patience. A hero, Heracles was learning, could not rely on one quality alone. After this unusual challenge, Eurystheus prepared another task. This time, he sent Heracles into the mountains of Arcadia to capture the Erymanthian Boar. The challenge seemed more familiar, a dangerous beast threatening the countryside. Yet this creature presented a different kind of danger. The Erymanthian Boar was enormous, aggressive, and powerful enough to destroy fields and terrorize villages. It lived among the snowy peaks of Mount Erymanthus, a rugged region covered with forests and steep terrain. Before beginning his hunt, Heracles traveled through the wilderness and encountered the wise centaur Chiron. Centaur myths were complex. Some were portrayed as wild and violent creatures ruled by instinct, but Chiron was different. He was known as a teacher of heroes, skilled in medicine, music, hunting, and wisdom. Many legendary figures of Greek mythology were said to have learned from him. During his time with Chiron, Heracles received guidance and hospitality. The peaceful meeting was short-lived, however, because the hero's journey was far from complete. Continuing into the mountains, Heracles searched for the boar's tracks. Snow covered the higher slopes, making movement difficult. The cold wind swept across the peaks, and the animal's heavy footprints marked a path through the frozen landscape. Rather than confronting the creature directly, Heracles developed a strategy. He chased the boar through deep snow, exhausting it until the powerful animal could no longer maintain its speed. Once the creature was weakened, Heracles captured it alive and carried it back to Eurystheus. The sight of the enormous boar reportedly terrified the king. Some stories say Eurystheus was so frightened that he hid inside a large bronze container and ordered Heracles to remove the animal immediately. Whether true or exaggerated, the tale reflects the growing fear Eurystheus had toward the hero he commanded. 2 more labors were complete. Heracles had defeated creatures of impossible strength. but each task had demanded something different from him. He was discovering that true heroism was not simply about overpowering enemies. It required judgment, restraint, and the ability to adapt. Yet Eurystheus was not finished. The next labor would send Heracles to a place where no warrior would want to go, the filthy stables of King Augean, where thousands of animals had created a problem that had been ignored for decades. For this challenge, Heracles would need something more powerful than a sword or a bow. He would need creativity. After capturing the sacred hind and the enormous Erymanthian boar, Heracles returned once again to King Eurystheus. With each completed labor, the hero proved that determination could overcome even the most unusual challenges. Yet the king continued searching for tasks that would humiliate him or make success seem impossible. For the fifth labor, Eurystheus chose a challenge that appeared almost insulting. Heracles was ordered to clean the stables of King Augean in a single day. Compared with facing lions, serpents, and giant beasts, cleaning a stable appeared almost beneath the hero of Heracles' reputation. But Eurystheus knew exactly what he was doing. This was not an ordinary stable. King Augean ruled the land of Elis, a fertile region in the western Peloponnese known for its rich fields and abundant livestock. His kingdom was blessed with wide plains, flowing rivers, and excellent grazing lands. Among his greatest possessions were enormous herds of cattle, said to number in the thousands. These animals represented wealth and power, but Augean had allowed his stables to become severely neglected. According to legend, the buildings had not been cleaned for 30 years. The waste from thousands of animals had piled up over generations, creating a massive and unpleasant problem. The stables were not merely dirty, they had become a monument to years of avoidance. Eurystheus believed this task would be impossible. Even a man as strong as Heracles could not remove decades of accumulated waste by himself in a single day. When Heracles arrived in Elis, he approached King Augean and offered to complete the task. However, he did not immediately reveal that this was one of his labors assigned by Eurystheus. Instead, he made a surprising agreement. If he cleaned the stables in one day, Augean would reward him with a portion of his cattle. The king laughed at the idea. Augean had likely heard of Heracles' victories. He knew the man before him had defeated terrifying creatures and survived impossible battles. But cleaning years of filth in one day seemed far less likely than defeating a monster. Confident that Heracles would fail, Augean accepted the bargain. Heracles entered the stables and studied the problem carefully. He understood something important. The challenge was not about strength. Trying to remove the waste by hand would take weeks, perhaps months. Even the greatest warrior in Greece could not accomplish such a task through physical effort alone. So instead of fighting against the problem, Heracles changed the way he looked at it. Nearby flowed two powerful rivers, the Alpheus and the Panius. Their waters traveled through the landscape, shaping valleys and nourishing the fields of Elis. Heracles decided to use the rivers themselves. With his immense strength, he broke openings in the walls surrounding the stables. Then he redirected the flow of both rivers through the buildings. The rushing waters poured into the stables, sweeping away the accumulated waste and carrying it out into the fields beyond. What would have required countless workers and endless days of labor was completed through a single brilliant idea. By the time the sun began to set, the impossible task was finished. The stables were clean. The rivers had done what human hands could not. When Augean saw what had happened, he was stunned. However, rather than honoring the agreement, he attempted to deny that he owed Heracles anything. The king argued that because Heracles had completed the task as part of a divine command, he should not receive payment. Some versions of the story say Augean even claimed he did not believe Heracles had truly accomplished the work himself. The dispute eventually reached a judgment before others, where the truth was revealed. Augean had promised a reward, and Heracles had fulfilled his side of the agreement. Yet the conflict did not end peacefully. Later traditions describe Heracles returning to Elis after completing his labors to punish Augean for his dishonesty. The hero eventually defeated the king and placed a new ruler on the throne. The cleaning of the Augean Stables became one of the most famous examples of Heracles' cleverness. Unlike the Nemean Lion, where courage and strength were required, or the Hydra, where teamwork and strategy were necessary, this labor was solved through creativity. Heracles demonstrated that intelligence could be just as powerful as physical force. The story also carried a deeper meaning for ancient audiences. A problem that appears overwhelming does not always require greater effort. Sometimes it requires a different approach entirely. The impossible mountain may not need to be climbed, it may need to be moved. With 5 labors completed, Heracles continued his path toward redemption. Yet Eurystheus remained determined to find challenges that could finally defeat him. The next tasks would take him into even stranger lands and introduce him to creatures unlike any he had faced before. In the forests of Arcadia, a flock of dangerous birds waited near a mysterious lake. Their feathers were said to be sharper than weapons, and their presence had turned an entire region into a place of fear. Then, far across the sea, another challenge awaited on the island of Crete. The labors of Heracles were becoming not only tests of strength, but journeys across the entire mythological world of Greece. Each adventure carried him farther from the man he once was and closer to becoming the immortal hero whose name would survive for thousands of years. After completing the task of cleaning the Augean Stables, Heracles returned to the service of King Eurystheus. The king had hoped the impossible amount of labor required would exhaust the hero, but each challenge only revealed another quality hidden within him. He had proven his strength against monsters. He had shown patience during long pursuits. He had used cleverness where force alone would not work. Now Eurystheus prepared another challenge, one that would take Heracles into a dark and unfamiliar corner of Greece. His 6th labor was to drive away the Stymphalian Birds. The creatures lived near Lake Stymphalia in Arcadia, a region of forests, mountains, and quiet valleys. For ordinary travelers, it was a peaceful landscape. But according to legend, something terrible had taken control of the area. A vast flock of monstrous birds had made their home near the lake. Ancient storytellers described them as unnatural creatures with bronze-colored feathers, sharp beaks, and claws capable of tearing through flesh. The birds destroyed crops, attacked livestock, and prevented people from safely traveling through the region. When Heracles arrived, he found the area nearly abandoned. The challenge was unlike any he had faced before. The birds could fly beyond the reach of ordinary weapons, and the thick forest surrounding the lake made it nearly impossible to approach them. Even Heracles' great strength would be of little use against hundreds of creatures attacking from the sky. Once again, he needed a different solution. The goddess Athena came to his aid. In many Greek myths, Athena appears as a guide for heroes, offering wisdom rather than simply fighting their battles for them. She understood that Heracles needed a way to disturb the flock and force the birds into the open. She gave him a special bronze rattle, crafted by the divine smith Hephaestus. Heracles carried the strange instrument to a nearby hill overlooking the lake. From there, he shook the rattle loudly, creating a terrifying noise that echoed across the valley. The birds panicked. The entire flock rose from the trees at once, filling the sky above the lake. Their wings darkened the sunlight as they circled overhead. This was the moment Heracles had been waiting for. With his bow in hand, he fired arrows into the sky. The birds that survived his attack fled far away, never again returning to terrorize the people of Stymphalia. The labor was complete, but once again, the victory showed that Heracles was more than a warrior. He succeeded because he understood that every challenge required a different approach. A monster could be fought, but a flock of flying creatures required strategy. After the Stymphalian Birds, Eurystheus sent Heracles far from the mainland. His next task would take him across the sea to the island of Crete. There, a magnificent but dangerous animal had become a threat to the kingdom. It was known as the Cretan Bull. Crete was one of the most important islands of the ancient Greek world. Surrounded by the blue waters of the Mediterranean, it was famous for its mountains, fertile valleys, and ancient cities. Long before the classical Greek period, the island had been home to the powerful Minoan civilization, whose palaces and artwork later inspired countless legends. The bull that lived there was no ordinary animal. According to myth, it was a divine creature connected to the sea god Poseidon. Some stories say that Poseidon sent the bull to King Minos of Crete as part of a test of loyalty. Minos was meant to sacrifice the magnificent animal to the god, but he was so impressed by its beauty that he kept it instead. Angered by this betrayal, Poseidon caused the bull to become wild and uncontrollable. The creature began destroying farmland, frightening villagers, and causing chaos across the island. When Heracles arrived, King Minos welcomed him and allowed him to attempt the capture. Unlike many of his previous labors, this task did not require killing the creature. Eurystheus wanted the bull brought back alive. Heracles tracked the animal across the island's rugged landscape. The bull was powerful and fast, charging through fields and forests with tremendous force. Its horns could tear through trees, and its strength made it dangerous even for an experienced warrior. But Heracles had faced worse. Using his courage and physical power, he confronted the bull directly. After a difficult struggle, he managed to overpower the creature and restrain it. He then transported the enormous animal back across the sea to mainland Greece. When Eurystheus saw the bull, he was once again forced to acknowledge Heracles' success. Yet the king still searched for a way to break him. The Cretan bull did not remain in Eurystheus' possession for long. Some traditions say the king released it, and the animal later wandered to other lands where it continued to cause trouble. In later myths, the same bull became connected to the hero Theseus and the famous creature known as the Minotaur. With 6 labors complete, Heracles had traveled farther than most people of his age would ever see. He had crossed mountains, entered dangerous forests, visited distant islands, and faced creatures that existed only in the boundaries between myth and reality. But his journey was only halfway finished. The remaining labors would become even more difficult. The next challenges would bring him against a violent race of creatures, a legendary herd guarded by a giant, and a journey to the edge of the known world. Each step would test not only what Heracles could defeat, but how much hardship he could endure. With 6 labors completed, Heracles had already traveled across much of the Greek world. He had hunted through forests, crossed seas, defeated creatures born from legend, and overcome challenges that seemed impossible for any ordinary person. Yet King Eurystheus remained determined to find a task that would finally break him. The next command would send Heracles to the distant lands of Thrace, where a violent king ruled over a kingdom surrounded by mountains and wild coastlines. His task was to capture the 4 horses of Diomedes. At first, this seemed like another simple request. After all, Hercules had already captured the sacred Lernaean Hind and the powerful Cretan Bull. But these were not ordinary horses. They belonged to King Diomedes of Thrace, a ruler known for his cruelty and brutality. Ancient stories describe him as a man who ruled through fear, commanding a group of fierce warriors and maintaining a herd of horses unlike any others in the world. The horses were enormous, wild, and uncontrollable, but their greatest terror came from what they ate. According to myth, Diomedes had trained the animals to feed on human flesh. Their iron chains were fastened securely because even their own handlers feared them. The sound of their hooves echoed through the kingdom, and travelers who crossed into Diomedes' lands risked becoming victims of both the king and his terrible beasts. For Hercules, the journey to Thrace was another test of courage. The land itself felt distant and unfamiliar compared with the sunny valleys of southern Greece. The coastline was rugged, the mountains were steep, and the forests stretched endlessly across the horizon. The farther north he traveled, the more he entered a world where Greek legends placed many strange and dangerous beings. When Hercules arrived in Thrace, he gathered information about the horses and the king who controlled them. He understood that rushing into battle without a plan would be foolish. The animals were dangerous, but Diomedes was the true source of the problem. With a small group of companions, Hercules approached the stables where the horses were kept. The exact details of the encounter vary between ancient sources. Some stories say Hercules fought Diomedes' guards first, while others describe him capturing the horses through surprise. Regardless of the version, the hero eventually succeeded in taking control of the terrifying animals. But the labor was not yet complete. Diomedes would not allow his prized horses to be taken without a fight. The Thracian king gathered his warriors and pursued Hercules. A fierce battle followed, with the hero facing both armed soldiers and the anger of a ruler unwilling to surrender his power. During the conflict, Hercules defeated Diomedes and ended his reign of cruelty. Some versions of the myth contain a strange and symbolic detail. After being captured, Diomedes was fed to his own horses. Once they tasted their former master's flesh, the animals became calmer and easier for Hercules to control. The story reflected a common theme in Greek mythology. Those who created suffering often eventually faced the consequences of their own actions. The horses that had once represented fear and violence became symbols of Hercules' victory over a cruel ruler. The hero had not simply completed a task, he had removed a threat from the world. When Hercules returned with the captured animals, Eurystheus once again found himself disappointed. Another impossible challenge had been overcome. The king's fear grew stronger. Each labor that was meant to destroy Hercules instead transformed him into an even greater legend. But the remaining tasks would become increasingly difficult. For his next labor, Eurystheus looked toward a distant land ruled by another powerful figure, King Geryon. Geryon was not an ordinary man. Ancient storytellers described him as a giant warrior with 3 bodies, 3 heads, or 3 separate forms joined together, depending on the version of the myth. He guarded a magnificent herd of red cattle on an island far to the west, near the edge of the known world. To complete the task, Hercules would need to travel farther than any previous journey had taken him. The road ahead would lead him beyond familiar lands, across deserts and seas, toward places where Greek imagination met the unknown. Before that journey began, however, Hercules would face another challenge closer to home. The next labor would involve a creature connected not with distant kingdoms, but with the wild forests of Greece. It was a massive beast known as the Erymanthian Boar's successor in terror. The monstrous Cretan Bull had already been captured, but now another dangerous creature awaited. The labors of Heracles continued to test every part of him. Strength alone was never enough. Every victory required something different: patience, intelligence, endurance, courage, and sometimes the willingness to enter places where no ordinary person would dare to go. After defeating King Diomedes and capturing his terrifying horses, Heracles returned once again to King Eurystheus. By this point, the impossible had become almost ordinary. The hero who had once been known only as a strong warrior had become a figure whose name traveled across kingdoms. Yet Eurystheus still had more commands. For his 10th labor, he ordered Heracles to capture the cattle of Geryon. This task would take Heracles farther west than any previous journey. To the ancient Greeks, the western edge of the world was a place filled with mystery. Beyond familiar lands lay vast oceans, unknown islands, and regions where legends placed strange creatures and forgotten kingdoms. The cattle belonged to Geryon, a powerful being who lived on an island called Erythea, somewhere near the boundaries of the known world. Ancient descriptions of Geryon vary. Some writers portrayed him as a giant with 3 bodies joined together, while others described him as a warrior with 3 heads. Regardless of the details, every version agreed that Geryon was an extraordinary and dangerous opponent. His greatest treasure was his magnificent herd of red cattle. The animals were guarded carefully by a herdsman named Eurytion and a 2-headed dog called Orthrus. Orthrus was the brother of Cerberus, the famous guardian of the Underworld, and like his sibling, he was a creature unlike any ordinary animal. The challenge was clear. Heracles had to travel across the world, reach the island, defeat the guardians, and return with the cattle alive. The journey itself became one of the greatest adventures connected to his name. Heracles traveled westward through unfamiliar lands, crossing mountains and valleys that ancient Greeks considered distant and mysterious. Along the way, he encountered landscapes few people from Greece had ever seen. Eventually, he reached the far western shores near the great ocean that surrounded the world in ancient imagination. There, he faced a challenge unlike any before. The heat was intense, and the sun burned down upon the unfamiliar landscape. According to legend, Heracles became so frustrated by the power of the sun that he raised his bow toward Helios, the sun god, threatening to shoot him. Rather than becoming angry, Helios admired Heracles' courage. The sun god offered him a golden cup or vessel that could carry him across the ocean. Using this divine gift, Heracles traveled over the waters and reached the distant island where Geryon's cattle were kept. There he found the herd. The animals were magnificent, their coats shining with a deep reddish color that made them unlike any cattle found in Greece. But the guardians quickly noticed the stranger. Orthrus attacked first. The 2-headed hound charged toward Heracles, but the hero defeated the creature with his club. Eurytion, the herdsman, followed and suffered the same fate. Now only Geryon remained. The giant warrior approached carrying powerful weapons, determined to protect his cattle. Ancient storytellers imagine the battle as one between 2 extraordinary figures, one a legendary guardian of the Western world, the other the greatest hero Greece had ever known. Geryon fought fiercely, but Heracles had faced too many impossible opponents to be easily defeated. With his bow and arrows, Heracles struck down the giant. The cattle were now his. However, the journey home proved nearly as difficult as reaching the island. Leading a herd of cattle across thousands of miles was no simple task. The animals had to be guided through unfamiliar lands, protected from thieves, and kept together throughout the long journey. Along the way, Heracles encountered additional dangers. Some stories describe him fighting local rulers who attempted to steal the cattle. Others tell of monsters and obstacles placed in his path. Every region he crossed added another chapter to the enormous journey. Eventually, after countless hardships, Heracles returned to Greece with the cattle of Geryon. The 10th labor was complete. Yet the journey had changed him. Earlier in life, Heracles had often reacted quickly, relying on strength before considering another approach. But years of trials had transformed him. He had learned patience during the pursuit of the sacred hind, strategy against the Hydra, and endurance during his travels across distant lands. The labors were not only punishments, they were shaping him into something greater. But Eurystheus still had one more task before the final challenge. For the 11th labor, Heracles would be sent to retrieve the golden apples of the Hesperides. This would lead him even farther into the unknown, toward a garden protected by divine forces and guarded by a creature that represented one of the oldest powers in Greek mythology. The golden apples were not ordinary fruit. They belonged to Hera herself, the same goddess whose anger had followed Heracles since before his birth. To complete this task, he would have to enter a place connected directly to the source of much of his suffering. The final stages of his journey would test not only his strength, but also his wisdom and understanding of the gods themselves. After completing the task of capturing the cattle of Geryon, Heracles had traveled farther than almost any hero of Greek legend. Yet King Eurystheus still had two final labors to assign. The 11th labor would send Heracles to a place even more mysterious than the lands he had already visited. He was ordered to retrieve the golden apples of the Hesperides. These were no ordinary fruits. The apples belonged to Hera herself. The same goddess who had pursued Heracles since before his birth had once received the trees as a wedding gift from Gaia, the ancient goddess of the earth. The golden fruit grew in a beautiful garden located somewhere at the far edge of the world, beyond mountains, deserts, and the lands known to most Greeks. The garden was protected by the Hesperides. These sisters were nymphs associated with the evening and the setting sun. But they were not the only protectors of the garden. A great serpent named Ladon was said to coil around the trees, guarding the apples day and night. Ladon possessed countless voices and never slept. For Eurystheus, the task seemed impossible. Heracles did not even know where the garden was located. Unlike previous labors, there was no clear path to follow. The garden existed at the edge of the known world, hidden beyond the ordinary reach of mortals. So Heracles began a journey of discovery. He traveled across distant lands, searching for anyone who might know the location of the Hesperides. Eventually, Heracles sought out the ancient sea god Nereus. Nereus was known as the Old Man of the Sea, a wise and prophetic being who possessed knowledge of hidden places and distant lands. However, he was also famous for his ability to change shape. When Heracles found him, Nereus attempted to escape by transforming into different creatures. But Heracles refused to release him. No matter what shape Nereus took, the hero held on until the sea god finally surrendered and revealed the location of the garden. The journey continued. Heracles traveled farther west until he reached the place where the Titan Atlas held up the heavens. In Greek mythology, Atlas was one of the Titans who had fought against Zeus and the Olympian gods during the Great War between the old and new generations of divine beings. As punishment for his rebellion, Zeus condemned Atlas to carry the weight of the sky upon his shoulders for eternity. When Heracles approached Atlas, he learned that the Titan had a connection to the garden of the Hesperides. Here, the story takes one of its most famous turns. Rather than fighting his way into the garden, Heracles used intelligence and cooperation. He asked Atlas to retrieve the golden apples himself. But there was a problem. The sky still needed someone to hold it. So Heracles offered to temporarily take Atlas' place. The Titan agreed, placing the immense weight of the heavens onto the hero's shoulders. For the first time, Heracles experienced a burden unlike any physical challenge he had faced before. He had carried enormous stones, defeated giants, and fought creatures of incredible strength. But holding up the sky was something entirely different. The weight was endless. There was no opponent to defeat and no weapon that could help him. Heracles simply had to endure. Meanwhile, Atlas traveled to the garden of the Hesperides and returned with the golden apples. But once he had them, the Titan saw an opportunity. After thousands of years carrying the heavens, Atlas had finally found someone willing to take his place. He decided he would deliver the apples to Eurystheus himself and leave Heracles standing beneath the sky forever. The hero quickly realized what was happening. But instead of arguing or challenging Atlas directly, Heracles used his wisdom. He thanked Atlas for his help and said he would gladly continue holding the sky. But first, he needed to adjust his position and prepare himself properly for the endless burden. Would Atlas briefly hold the sky again while Heracles arranged himself more comfortably? Confident that Heracles had accepted his fate, Atlas agreed. The moment the weight returned to Atlas' shoulders, Heracles picked up the apples and walked away. The Titan had been outsmarted. This story became one of the most memorable examples of Heracles' intelligence. The hero who was often remembered for his incredible strength had proven that wisdom could accomplish what force could not. When Heracles returned to Eurystheus with the golden apples, the king faced yet another impossible victory. The 11th labor was complete. However, because the apples belonged to the gods, there was no simple way for Eurystheus to keep them. In many versions of the myth, Athena eventually returned the apples to the garden of the Hesperides, ensuring that the sacred order of the world remained unchanged. The labor was never truly about possessing the apples. It was about proving that Heracles could overcome any challenge placed before him. Throughout his journey, he had changed. The angry young man who once struggled to control his emotions had become patient and thoughtful. The warrior who relied only on strength had learned the value of strategy and wisdom. But one final labor remained. The last command from Eurystheus would send Heracles into the deepest and most frightening place imaginable. He would have to enter the realm of the dead itself. There, beneath the earth, waited Cerberus, the three-headed guardian of the Underworld. And for the first time, Heracles would face a challenge where victory would require not killing a creature, but returning alive from the land of the dead. After retrieving the golden apples of the Hesperides, Heracles returned to King Eurystheus knowing that only one labor remained. For years, he had carried the weight of his past and endured task after task designed to break him. Eurystheus ordered Heracles to capture Cerberus, the three-headed guardian of the Underworld, and bring the creature back alive. The command was almost unimaginable. The Underworld was not a distant kingdom that could be reached by ordinary travel. No living person was supposed to enter, and even fewer were supposed to return. Ancient Greeks imagined souls traveling there after death, crossing rivers that separated the mortal world from the realm below. The river Styx was one of the most famous, and the ferryman Charon was said to carry the dead across its dark waters. At the entrance to this realm stood Cerberus. The creature was usually described as a massive dog with 3 heads, a serpent-like tail, and snakes growing from parts of its body. His purpose was not to attack every soul that approached, but to prevent the dead from leaving and the living from entering. For Eurystheus, this seemed like the perfect final challenge. If Heracles could not be defeated by monsters of the earth, perhaps he could be defeated by the laws of nature itself. Before entering the underworld, Heracles understood that he could not simply force his way inside. This was a place governed by ancient rules, and even his strength had limits. So he sought guidance. The hero traveled to Eleusis, where he participated in sacred mysteries connected with the afterlife. These rituals were among the most important religious traditions of ancient Greece, though their exact details were kept secret by those who experienced them. The purpose was believed to be preparation for confronting the unknown. Afterward, Heracles traveled to an entrance of the underworld and began his descent. The journey below was unlike any adventure he had experienced. There were no forests, mountains, or open skies. Instead, he entered a world of darkness and silence, where the ordinary rules of life no longer applied. Ancient stories describe him encountering many figures from mythology, including heroes and spirits who existed in the shadowy realm of the dead. Among them was Theseus, the legendary king of Athens. According to some versions of the myth, Theseus and his companion Pirithous had attempted to enter the underworld earlier in an effort to capture Persephone, the wife of Hades. Their plan failed and they became trapped. When Heracles arrived, he helped free Theseus, though Pirithous remained behind. The episode connected two of Greece's greatest heroes, showing that even the strongest warriors could face challenges beyond physical combat. Eventually, Heracles reached the palace of Hades. There, he faced the ruler of the underworld himself. Unlike many previous encounters, there was no great battle. Heracles did not arrive seeking destruction. He explained that he had been commanded by Eurystheus to bring Cerberus to the world above as part of his final labor. Hades agreed, but only under one condition. Heracles could take Cerberus, but he had to capture the beast without using weapons. This was another test of strength and control. The hero approached the guardian of the underworld unarmed. Cerberus was enormous and terrifying. The three heads snapped and roared, the serpent tail lashed behind him, and the creature fought with all the power expected of a guardian of the dead. But Heracles did not attack with anger. Instead, he relied on his own strength and determination. He wrapped his arms around the beast and held on despite its struggles. The battle was a contest of endurance rather than violence. Slowly, Cerberus weakened. The mighty guardian of the underworld had been overcome. Heracles had succeeded. He then brought Cerberus back to the world of the living, fulfilling the final command of King Eurystheus. The sight of the creature terrified the king. According to legend, Eurystheus was so frightened that he immediately ordered Heracles to return Cerberus to the underworld. The king had demanded impossible tasks again and again, but now even he could no longer deny that Heracles had completed them all. The 12 labors were finished. The journey that began with tragedy had finally reached its conclusion. When Heracles first stood before the oracle at Delphi, he was a grieving man searching for a way to make peace with his past. He had lost everything that mattered to him and believed his life had been permanently defined by sorrow. But the labors had transformed him. He had learned patience from the Golden Hind, cleverness from the Augean Stables, humility from serving Eurystheus, compassion from protecting people he had never met, self-control from facing challenges that could not be solved through anger. The man who returned from the underworld was not the same man who had left Thebes years earlier. The labors had not erased his suffering, but they had given meaning to it. Yet the end of the 12 labors was not the end of Heracles' story. Greek mythology rarely allows heroes to simply retire into peace. There would be new adventures, new battles, new friendships, and new tragedies. Heracles had earned his place among the greatest heroes of Greece. But his final destiny, the fate that awaited him beyond mortal life, was still to come. After completing the 12 labors, Heracles had finally achieved what once seemed impossible. The man who had arrived at Delphi as a broken figure searching for forgiveness had become the greatest hero of the Greek world. His name was spoken across kingdoms. Songs were composed about his victories, and people told stories of the monsters he had defeated and the impossible journeys he had survived. Yet the end of the labors did not mean the end of hardship. Greek mythology rarely allowed heroes to live quietly after earning their fame. The gods continued to influence their lives, and fate continued to lead them toward new trials. Heracles now entered a new chapter of his life. He traveled throughout Greece, taking part in battles, helping allies, and seeking new adventures. His reputation opened the doors of kings and cities, but his greatest strength was still matched by a complicated fate. Among the many people he encountered was a woman named Deianira. Deianira was the daughter of King Ennius of Calydon and was known in Greek stories for her beauty and noble character. Unlike the warriors and monsters Heracles had faced, she represented something much different, a chance for companionship and a peaceful future. The two eventually married. For a time, it appeared that Heracles had found the happiness that had escaped him years earlier. After losing his first family in the tragedy caused by Hera's curse, he now had the opportunity to build a new home. Together, Heracles and Deianira traveled through Greece. During their journey, they came to the river Ivenus, where they needed assistance crossing the water. There they met the centaur Nessus. Centaurs were creatures with the upper body of a human and the lower body of a horse. In Greek mythology, many were portrayed as wild and unpredictable, though some, like Chiron, were wise and honorable. Nessus was different. He offered to carry Deianira across the river while Heracles crossed separately. At first, the arrangement seemed harmless. But once Nessus reached the other side, he attempted to abduct Deianira. Hearing her cries, Heracles immediately acted. Using his bow, the hero shot Nessus with an arrow coated in the poisonous blood of the Hydra. The wound was fatal, and the centaur collapsed. But as Nessus lay dying, he devised one final act of revenge. Knowing that his own blood had been mixed with the Hydra's deadly poison, he told Deianira a lie. He claimed that his blood could be used as a powerful love charm. If Heracles ever became distant or interested in another woman, she could place some of the blood on his clothing, and he would return to her with renewed affection. Deianira believed him. She collected the substance, unaware that she was carrying a deadly poison. Years passed. Heracles continued his adventures, and Deianira remained at home waiting for his return. Like many spouses of heroes in Greek mythology, she lived with uncertainty. The life of a legendary warrior brought honor, but it also brought long absences and constant danger. Eventually, rumors reached Deianira that Heracles had become interested in another woman named Iole. Iole was the daughter of King Eurytus of Achaea. Heracles had defeated her father's kingdom during a conflict and had taken Iole among the captives afterward. Afraid that she was losing Heracles' affection, Deianira remembered the gift from Nessus. She wanted only to restore their relationship. Carefully, she placed the supposed love charm onto a garment and sent it to Heracles as a gift. But Nessus had deceived her. The cloth carried not love, but death. When Heracles wore the garment, the poison from the Hydra's blood began to burn into his skin. The pain was unbearable. The fabric clung to him, and every attempt to remove it only made the suffering worse. The hero who had endured lions, monsters, and impossible labors now faced a battle he could not win through strength. His greatest enemy was something invisible. The poison spread through his body, and Heracles realized there was no cure. When Deianira learned what had happened, she was overwhelmed with horror. She had never intended to harm the man she loved. Understanding that Nessus had tricked her, she could no longer bear the guilt of what she had caused. The tragedy revealed one of the central themes of Heracles' story. Strength could defeat monsters. Courage could overcome impossible challenges. But even the greatest hero could not control every force in the world. Heracles had survived 12 legendary labors, crossed into the Underworld, and defeated enemies that terrified entire nations. Yet his final suffering came not from a beast or a warrior, but from a misunderstanding born out of love and fear. Knowing his mortal life was ending, Heracles prepared for his final journey. He ordered a funeral pyre to be built on Mount Ida. There, surrounded by the landscape of Greece that had witnessed so many of his adventures, he prepared to leave behind the world of mortals. Those who gathered mourned the passing of the greatest hero they had ever known. But according to Greek mythology, death was not the end of Heracles. The gods had watched his struggles. They had seen his suffering, his courage, and the transformation that had taken place over a lifetime of challenges. The final chapter of Heracles' story would not be about defeat. It would be about his greatest transformation of all. The life of Heracles had reached its darkest moment. After years of impossible victories, after defeating monsters and completing the 12 labors, the greatest hero of Greece had finally encountered a force that even he could not overcome. The poison of the Hydra, carried through the blood of the centaur Nessus, had brought terrible suffering. The pain grew beyond anything a mortal body could endure, and Heracles understood that his earthly life was coming to an end. Yet the story of Heracles was never only about his suffering. From the beginning, his life had been shaped by the relationship between mortals and gods. He was born from the union of Zeus and a mortal woman, carrying within him both human vulnerability and divine potential. Now, at the end of his mortal journey, that connection would become more important than ever. Before his death, Heracles climbed Mount Ida, where a funeral pyre had been prepared. The mountain stood as a fitting final place for the hero who had spent his life traveling across the Greek world. From forests and islands to distant lands beyond the horizon, his adventures had carried him farther than most mortals could imagine. There, Heracles lay down upon the pyre. According to some versions of the myth, he ordered his companions to light the flames. Others say that no one was willing to perform the final act until a passing traveler named Pois agreed. As the fire burned, something extraordinary happened. The mortal part of Heracles began to disappear, but the divine part remained. The suffering body that had endured so much was not the final destiny of the hero. Thunder echoed across the sky. Zeus, watching from Mount Olympus, had not forgotten his son. The gods had witnessed Heracles' entire journey, from the moment Hera sent serpents against him as an infant, through his years of tragedy and redemption, to his final acceptance of his fate. They had seen not only his strength but also his growth. Heracles was no longer simply a powerful warrior. He had become a symbol of endurance, sacrifice, and transformation. Zeus carried Heracles to Mount Olympus, where he was welcomed among the gods. This event became known as his apotheosis, the transformation of a mortal into a divine being. In ancient Greek thought, the boundary between humans and gods was not always completely fixed. Heroes who achieved extraordinary greatness could sometimes be honored after death, receiving temples, sacrifices, and lasting worship. Hercules represented the ultimate example of this idea. A man born into suffering had achieved immortality. The gods welcomed him into their home, and according to many traditions, Hera herself eventually accepted him. Some myths say that the goddess who had spent his entire life opposing him finally recognized his greatness and gave him her daughter Hebe, the goddess of youth, as his wife. The symbolism was powerful. The conflict between Hera and Heracles, which began before his birth, ended not with destruction but with reconciliation. The child she once tried to kill became one of the most honored figures in the divine world. On Mount Olympus, Heracles no longer carried the burdens that had defined his mortal existence. There were no more monsters to defeat, no more impossible tasks to complete, and no more guilt from the tragedies of his past. The hero had finally found peace. But the legacy of Heracles did not remain only among the gods. Back in the mortal world, his story continued to spread. Cities across Greece honored him with temples and festivals. Athletes, warriors, and ordinary people looked to him as an example of courage and perseverance. One of the most famous places connected to his legacy was Olympia. According to some traditions, Heracles was associated with the founding of the Olympic Games, either as their creator or as an early figure connected with their traditions. Whether historically accurate or not, the connection reflected how deeply his image became tied to ideas of strength, competition, and human achievement. Artists also preserved his memory. Ancient Greek pottery, sculptures, and carvings frequently showed scenes from his adventures. Heracles wearing the skin of the Nemean Lion, battling the Hydra, carrying the captured Lernaean Hind, or struggling with the mighty Atlas. Each image represented more than an exciting story. Together, they created a portrait of a hero who was constantly tested. Heracles was not perfect. That was part of what made him so compelling. Unlike many gods, he experienced pain, confusion, anger, and loss. He made mistakes. He suffered consequences. He knew what it meant to struggle against forces beyond his control. Yet he continued. The ancient Greeks understood something deeply human in his story. A hero was not someone who never suffered. A hero was someone who endured suffering and continued forward. Heracles' journey began with a curse and ended with immortality. Between those 2 points was a lifetime filled with hardship, but also moments of incredible courage and compassion. His story became a reminder that even a person carrying great burdens could be transformed by perseverance. The man who once believed his life was ruined became the greatest hero of Greece. The child threatened by Hera became a companion of the gods. The mortal who faced death became immortal. And the name Heracles, meaning the glory of Hera, became one of the greatest ironies of Greek mythology. The goddess who caused so much of his suffering would ultimately become part of the story of his eternal glory. The story of Heracles did not end when he joined the gods on Mount Olympus. The ancient Greeks did not remember Heracles simply as a man who possessed incredible strength. They remembered him as a symbol of endurance. His story survived because it contained something deeply human. Heracles was powerful, but he was not perfect. He was the son of a god, yet he experienced pain like any mortal. He could defeat monsters, but he could not escape grief. He was celebrated as a hero, but he carried the consequences of his mistakes. This combination of greatness and vulnerability made him one of the most enduring figures of Greek mythology. Unlike many heroes who were remembered for a single achievement, Heracles became associated with an entire lifetime of trials. The 12 labors alone contained enough adventures to inspire generations of storytellers. Each labor represented a different challenge. The Nemean Lion showed his physical courage. The Hydra revealed his ability to adapt. The Lernaean Hind demonstrated patience and restraint. The Augean Stables proved that intelligence could be more powerful than strength. The golden apples of the Hesperides showed wisdom and cleverness. The capture of Cerberus proved that even the boundaries between life and death could not stop him. Together, these stories created the image of a hero who was constantly tested and transformed by his experiences. The Greeks also viewed Hercules as a protector. Many heroes of mythology were remembered because they defeated enemies. But Hercules was often celebrated because his victories helped others. He destroyed creatures that threatened villages, defeated cruel rulers, and removed dangers from the world. His adventures reflected an ancient idea that civilization existed between two forces, order and chaos. The wilderness contained dangers that humans could not control. Monsters represented fears of the unknown, the forces that existed beyond farms, cities, and familiar roads. When Hercules defeated these threats, he symbolically brought safety and order back to the world. This idea made him especially important to ancient Greeks. He was not simply a warrior seeking glory. He was a figure who stood between humanity and the dangers surrounding it. Temples and shrines dedicated to Hercules appeared throughout the Greek world. People honored him with sacrifices and festivals, believing that the hero could provide protection and assistance. His worship extended beyond Greece as well. As Greek culture spread throughout the Mediterranean, stories of Hercules traveled with it. Different regions adapted his myths, connecting him with local traditions and landscapes. The Romans later adopted Hercules under the name Hercules. Roman writers and artists continued expanding his story, and his image became even more widespread. Statues, paintings, and literature portrayed him as the ideal strongman, often showing him wearing the Nemean Lion skin and carrying his famous club. Over time, however, different cultures interpreted him in different ways. Some viewed him as a symbol of physical strength. Others focused on his courage and perseverance. Philosophers saw deeper meanings in his struggles, viewing his labors as a metaphor for the difficulties every person must overcome in life. The idea of a hero facing 12 difficult tasks became a powerful storytelling pattern that influenced countless stories throughout history. The journey of Hercules reflected a universal theme. Great achievements are rarely gained without hardship. The hero's path was not a straight road toward success. It was filled with mistakes, losses, and moments when giving up would have been understandable. His greatest victory was not defeating the lion or capturing monsters. It was transforming himself. At the beginning of his story, Hercules was a man overwhelmed by forces beyond his control. Hera's anger shaped his childhood, and tragedy followed him into adulthood. But through his trials, he developed qualities that went beyond strength. He learned humility. He learned patience. He learned responsibility. He learned that true power required control. This transformation is what separated Hercules from many other legendary warriors. Strength alone was never enough. The strongest person could still fail without wisdom and compassion. The greatest hero was not the one who never suffered. It was the one who found meaning despite suffering. Even today, the name Hercules remains familiar around the world. His image appears in books, films, artwork, and countless retellings. Although the details of his story have changed across thousands of years, the central idea remains the same. A person can face impossible challenges and still continue forward. A life marked by hardship can still become a story of triumph. The child who was nearly destroyed by jealousy became a companion of the gods. The man burdened by tragedy became a symbol of hope. The mortal who completed impossible labors became immortal in memory. And perhaps that is why the legend of Hercules has endured for so long. Not because he was the strongest hero who ever lived, but because his story reminds us that even the greatest heroes must struggle, learn, and change. The journey of Hercules was a journey from suffering to redemption, from weakness to greatness, and from mortality to legend. For thousands of years, people have looked back toward the ancient world and found his story waiting there, a reminder that courage is not the absence of hardship. It is the decision to continue despite it. Thousands of years have passed since the ancient Greeks first told stories of Hercules, yet his name remains one of the most recognizable from the world of mythology. But the legend of Hercules continues. His story survives because it speaks to ideas that remain meaningful across time: struggle, perseverance, failure, redemption, and the search for a better version of oneself. Every generation has found something different in the tale of Hercules. To ancient Greeks, he was a hero who protected humanity from dangers beyond ordinary control. To philosophers, he represented the difficult path toward virtue. To artists, he was the perfect subject for exploring strength and courage. To modern audiences, he remains a figure who reminds us that even extraordinary people must overcome hardship. One reason Hercules has endured is because he is not portrayed as flawless. Many legendary figures are remembered as almost perfect, untouched by weakness or doubt. Hercules is different. He becomes a hero despite his struggles. His anger sometimes overwhelms him. His choices sometimes lead to tragedy. He experiences loss, regret, and uncertainty. The same strength that allows him to defeat monsters can also become dangerous when not guided by wisdom. This complexity makes him feel surprisingly human. The ancient Greeks understood that greatness did not come from being free of problems. Instead, greatness came from how someone responded to those problems. Hercules represented the idea that a person could be shaped by hardship rather than destroyed by it. His 12 labors especially became a lasting symbol of perseverance. The phrase, Herculean task, eventually entered common language to describe something requiring enormous effort. It reflects the belief that some challenges appear impossible at first, but determination and courage can make them achievable. The expression survived because the central idea of the myth remains familiar. Everyone faces their own difficult tasks. Everyone encounters moments when the path ahead seems too difficult. Everyone must find the strength to continue. Of course, modern interpretations of Hercules have changed the story in many ways. Ancient myths were never fixed stories. They evolved as they passed from one generation to another. Different poets, playwrights, and artists emphasized different parts of his character. Some focused on the warrior who defeated monsters. Others explored the tragic figure who suffered because of forces beyond his control. Some presented him as a symbol of physical strength, while others highlighted his intelligence, compassion, and ability to grow. This flexibility helped his story survive. A myth that can only mean one thing often fades with time. But a story that allows each generation to discover something new can remain alive for centuries. Hercules also influenced countless later heroes. The pattern of a character facing a series of difficult trials appears throughout literature and storytelling. Heroes in many cultures follow a similar path. They begin with a challenge, endure suffering, discover their abilities, and return changed. The influence of Heracles can be seen in countless adventure stories, fantasy tales, and modern films. The idea of the hero overcoming impossible odds has become one of the most powerful storytelling traditions in human history. Yet beneath all the battles and monsters, the heart of Heracles' story is not really about strength. It is about transformation. At the beginning of his legend, Heracles is defined by forces outside his control. His birth is affected by the rivalry between Zeus and Hera. His early life is shaped by divine anger. His greatest tragedy comes from losing control of himself. But through his trials, he becomes something more. The labors give him purpose. They force him to confront his weaknesses. They teach him that power must be balanced with responsibility. By the end of his story, Heracles is not simply the strongest man in Greece. He is someone who has endured suffering and found meaning afterward. That may be the greatest reason his legend has survived. Heracles' story does not promise that life will be easy. It does not suggest that strength will prevent hardship. Instead, it offers a different message. Even when a person faces overwhelming challenges, those experiences can become part of a greater journey. The mountains climbed, the battles fought, and the burdens carried can shape someone into a stronger and wiser person. The ancient world looked to Heracles as a bridge between humans and gods. He was born mortal but carried divine blood. He experienced suffering but achieved immortality. He belonged to both worlds. Perhaps that is why his story feels timeless. Heracles represents the space between what we are and what we hope to become. He reminds us that heroes are not created by easy victories. They are created through challenges, choices, and the courage to keep moving forward. Long after the ancient temples fell silent, Heracles remained. His name continued through manuscripts, sculptures, paintings, and stories passed from one generation to the next. The monsters may have been mythical. The battles may have belonged to another age. But the struggle at the center of his story remains familiar. The struggle to overcome hardship. The struggle to discover purpose. The struggle to become something greater than we once believed possible. And that is why, thousands of years later, the legend of Heracles still lives. The legend of Heracles is one of the oldest and most enduring stories ever told. Across thousands of years, his name has traveled from ancient temples and Greek amphitheaters to books, paintings, films, and stories shared around the world. The details of his adventures have changed over time, but the heart of his journey has remained the same. It is the story of a person who faced impossible burdens and discovered the strength to continue. Heracles was born into a world shaped by conflict between gods and mortals. From the very beginning, his life was marked by forces beyond his control. Hera's anger followed him from infancy, and the suffering he experienced later in life seemed impossible to escape. Yet his story was never defined only by tragedy. What made Heracles extraordinary was not simply that he was strong. Many beings in Greek mythology possessed incredible power. What separated Heracles was his ability to endure. When he stood before the oracle at Delphi, he was not a triumphant hero. He was a broken man searching for a way to move forward. The 12 labors became more than punishments given by King Eurystheus. They became a journey of transformation. Each challenge revealed a different part of what it meant to be a hero. The Nemean Lion tested his courage. The Hydra tested his ability to adapt. The Lernaean Hind tested his patience. The Augean Stables tested his creativity. The golden apples of the Hesperides tested his wisdom. Cerberus tested his ability to face the unknown. With every labor, Heracles became more than the warrior who could overpower enemies. He became someone who understood that true strength came from more than physical power. It came from endurance. It came from self-control. It came from the willingness to continue even when the path ahead seemed impossible. The story of Heracles also reminds us that heroes are not perfect. He made mistakes. He experienced anger and grief. He carried regret. His greatest battles were not always against monsters. Sometimes they were against himself. That is what makes his legend so timeless. Heracles was not remembered because he lived an easy life. He was remembered because he faced a difficult one and continued moving forward. The ancient Greeks saw something deeply meaningful in his journey. They understood that hardship was part of the human experience. Every person faces challenges that seem too large, burdens that feel too heavy, and moments when giving up appears easier than continuing. Heracles represented the hope that struggle could lead somewhere meaningful. His journey from suffering to immortality showed that a person's past does not have to determine their future. The man who began his story surrounded by tragedy ended it among the gods. The child threatened by Hera became one of the greatest heroes ever known. The mortal who carried impossible burdens became a symbol of strength for generations. Perhaps the greatest lesson of Heracles is that greatness is not created by avoiding hardship. It is created by facing hardship. The mountains he crossed, the monsters he defeated, and the burdens he carried were not just obstacles. They were the experiences that shaped him into something greater. Even today, the word Herculean remains part of our language, describing challenges that demand extraordinary effort. The reason that word survives is because the idea behind it is still familiar. Everyone has their own labors. Everyone has obstacles that seem impossible. Everyone must find their own strength to continue. The world of Heracles may belong to mythology, but the emotions within his story remain completely human. The fear of failure, the pain of loss, the desire for redemption, the hope of becoming something better. These are experiences that connect the ancient world with our own. Long after the temples of Greece became ruins and the voices of ancient storytellers faded away, Heracles remained. Not because he was invincible, not because he never suffered, but because he showed that even the greatest burdens can be carried. His story is a reminder that heroes are not born from easy victories. They are created through struggle, perseverance, and the courage to continue when the journey becomes difficult. And so, beneath the stars that once watched over ancient Greece, the legend of Heracles lives on. A hero who fought monsters, a man who faced his own darkness, a mortal who became immortal, and a story that continues to remind us that within every challenge lies the possibility of transformation. Good night.